Hello, I'm Michael Mayer from VocalWisdom.com, and here we are for our fourth class of the VocalWisdom.com Masterclass podcast series. And today the topic is kind of how to get started. I have a question from a young man, Patrick. He's 15 years old, and from Tipperary is all he says. And he tells me that he's recently gotten into singing, and he's really enjoying it, which is great. He hasn't had any lessons, and he has no clue how good or bad he is, he says. His friends tell him that he has a good voice and that he should go for the lead role in a school play. And he'd love to get more involved because he enjoys it, but he's wondering how he should get started and what he can do to get better. He ends his email by saying, "Can you please give me some advice on where to get started and some singing tips?" He cannot sing high notes, so it would be awesome if I could give him some tips on how to perfect that. Thank you. And that's great, and I appreciate him coming to me with his interest and for advice. I hope it's obvious that that there's a little bit of, I guess you could call, naivete in this email, which is innocent, which is, okay. But the reality is that we're not going to be able to really learn what we need to learn from an email response, even no matter how good I am. It's just not going to really work. But I did reply to him, and I gave him some advice that I could, but it's just the beginning. And that's what I want to talk about here in today's class, is kind of what, just the bare essentials of what we need to start becoming aware of, that we need to learn in order to start our journey of developing our voice, becoming a singer, improving our skills, and trying to realize our potential. So I wrote a blog post similar to this topic last summer that I titled "The Answer to Every Question," because I get questions all the time from people interested in trying to figure out their voice, and everybody has similarities. We all have similarities. The basics of our vocal instrument are essentially the same, but we all have differences in that we all develop differently. We have different experiences. We have different habits that we develop. We have different speaking habits, for instance, because we live in different parts of the world. And so we have different accents, which are speaking habits. We have different personalities, which are going to come through to some degree in our speaking habits. So the way we use the voice is going to develop the condition of the voice. So if we're really, for instance, an example might be if we're really gruff and we kind of growl when we talk all the time, that's going to, over time, that's going to change the condition of the voice, so it's going to lose flexibility, it's going to lose musicality. So if somebody that uses their voice in that way wanted to sing, they'd have a rough time because the way they've been using the voice has conditioned it to be rough and kind of atonal. It doesn't really produce pitch. So that would be a really challenging thing if somebody like that were to decide they wanted to sing. Usually people are drawn to singing because they have a certain inclination towards it. Now, it may seem like they can't. That doesn't mean that they necessarily are really good singers naturally. It's very common to be drawn to singing because there is something, sometimes even very deep inside a person that they feel, but they can't necessarily express it or bring it out. So it may not be noticeable to friends or family or outside observers that this is something that maybe they are suited for, but it just, because of personality or vocal habits up to that point in their life, it's not obvious that that is something that they're inclined to do. That describes me perfectly. I was very shy growing up, quiet, not very, put myself out there kind of personality. And but inside of me, I always had this love for singing. It was very, it was something that I was very drawn to. And so when I started to sing and show an interest for singing, it wasn't until college, really, that was noticeable to anybody else. I would sing on my own, just kind of like, like a lot of people do. But that didn't, that's not something that really leads one to think that they will pursue it as a vocation or a profession even. But that's how I started, and that was something that I was passionate about, and I felt very strongly about, and I gradually developed what I needed to learn, and that, I think that played a role in me becoming an effective and good at teaching others, because I had to kind of catch up and learn things that the other singers around me, they had been singing in high school, and they even had voice lessons where I had no experience with singing at all. Obviously, not any voice lessons. So, I kind of had to catch up and go through that process, and it was, and that led me to be what I am now. And we each have our own unique experiences and our own unique path, and we need to always recognize that that's the reality, and that there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we may feel like we're not as good as the next person because we didn't sing in high school, or because we didn't have voice lessons, or maybe because we crack every once in a while. Our voice doesn't seem to do what we want it to do. So we all have our own path, and there's value in that path. All we have to do is accept that, and stop thinking that there's something wrong with it. So that's the first thing, actually. That's the place to start, is to accept that everybody has a different path, and that's okay. There's not anything wrong with maybe being less obviously gifted. If it's something you want to do and you feel it, and that's the thing, it's hard to really define what that is, but it's inside of us. It's in your heart. It's in your bones. It's just in you that it's like, I really want to do this. And I remember saying when I was in college, I kind of have to go into singing because I feel like that's the only thing that I'm willing to invest the time and effort necessary in order to accomplish a degree. Any other field, science, math, or whatever, just didn't hold my attention and didn't get my energy going enough to really say, okay, I can spend the time, the years and the reading and the classwork and all of the stuff that goes into, earning a degree. I don't think I could have done it in any other field because I just didn't have a strong enough desire. But for singing, I did, even though I had so much to make up and catch up with. So that's what I think the first thing we have to think about when we are interested, right? And we have an interest in singing. Live with that for a little while and think about how interested am I? What am I willing to do? Am I willing to practice, daily to get better? Now, obviously, we don't have to strive to be a professional. There's a lot of value in singing for our own enjoyment, and we don't have to, invest as much time or energy in that case. We do what we feel we want to do. Even for that, we're going to enjoy it more if we have a good idea and a good understanding of what the instrument is and how it works and how we can make it do the things we want it to do. What I like to call, if we can understand how it behaves naturally, right? And so that's what my whole mission is, and is getting that information out and promoting it and helping people. And some people come and work with me individually over Skype or in person if they happen to be in my part of my city. And some people just meet with me once and get an idea of what to go with and work on their own. Some people send me recordings and I do my video consultation with them, and that works for them. So there's a whole range of possibilities of ways to increase increase your understanding, develop yourself, and move forward on that path to developing your voice. Some ideas I think that are really kind of the starting point. So like I was just saying, think about what you want. Think about what you want to do, how much you want to get out of it. Because that's going to, the old adage, you get out of it what you put into it. So think about what you want to get out of it and what you want to do. That's going to kind of give you an idea of what you're going to have to expect to put into it. If you want to go all the way and be a singer and nothing else, then you're going to have to put in a lot of time and effort to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's doable. But that's a lot of responsibility. If that's what you want to do, you've got to do the work. And if you're just interested in having an enjoyable time using your voice, maybe join a choir or singing solo at whatever opportunities you can find, that's awesome too. And the better you understand your voice, the more you're going to enjoy those opportunities. So some specifics of what I would advise somebody in that situation, like our email sender, Patrick. Like I said, obviously you're not going to learn how to do everything in just this, how long, 10, 15, 20 minutes this message will be, this class. But some places to start that you can start that process and start what I like to call your process of discovery. That's really what we're doing when we're learning to use the voice. We're discovering, because we need to learn to do something that we don't know how to do yet, right? Obviously, but we don't. I think sometimes we don't think about that. So we're going into the unknown, and the unknown is discovery. And so we need to have that attitude that we can't have the attitude that there is a right way to do it, and I know what that right way is, I just can't do it yet, so I'm going to try to do it the right way, and that's it, period. And then I'm going to practice that, and then the right way is going to be perfect. We're organic. We're not, we have mechanics, but we're not a machine. So we have to first discover the way our equipment works now. And then through using it as effectively as we can, we're going to improve the condition. Just like we can ruin the condition by using the voice harshly, like that example I mentioned earlier of the guy who speaks real gruff. If we use our voice well in a good coordination, that's going to also start the process of improving the condition of the voice, so it's going to be better able to function, right? So that's how we improve, that's how we heal. If we've hurt the voice, that's how we heal the voice. So we kind of have this dual pathway that we're traveling. We have the pathway of our skills, our coordination, what we do, how we do it. Then we have the pathway of the condition of the instrument. So we have coordination and we have condition. And the condition that we're in at any given moment is going to have an influence on how well our coordination works. How we use the voice in our coordination is over time going to have an influence on improving the condition, which then will help, as the condition improves, that's going to help improve our ability to coordinate and use the voice and function well. So they contribute to each other, and that's the process that we want to keep working and understand, so that we can take advantage of that. So condition we can't change just like that. Condition is what we have at this moment. But what we can change is coordination, and that's through understanding how things work more optimally. What's the natural behavior of the parts of the body involved that make up the vocal instrument? And the way to do that is to understand what the purpose is that they're trying to fulfill, and then see how they can fulfill that. And like I always say, what we're trying to do is we're trying to use the body, the parts of the body more specifically, and use them as a musical instrument would function. And so, as we talk about all the time, we have three main components that make up this musical instrument. We have, obviously, every musical instrument, at least of this type, has to have some kind of vibrating source, vibrating material that produces sound. That's kind of the source of the sound of the instrument. Just like, so those are like strings and reeds and lips for horn players, things like that. And for us, it's the vocal cords inside the larynx. So they're kind of like, they're folds of tissue, and they're kind of like lips. Sometimes they've even been referred to as the vocal lips by some teachers and such. So that's understanding that is a very important component so that we can keep it in mind. Another important component is something to activate that vibrating material. A lot of the instruments that I kind of listed there use air pressure. So reeds, we apply air pressure, or like in like I just saw a video yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind, of like bagpipes in Scotland. They use a big sack of air, and that air, as you kind of squeeze that sack of air, creates air pressure that then puts air pressure against the reeds inside the pipes, and so you get that drone, and you can play the melody with the finger holes and such. So there's air pressure on reeds. We can use air pressure on lips for trumpets and brass instruments. We use friction, basically, for the bowing of stringed instruments, or fingers or a pick to create a plucking sort of friction on guitars, things like that. So what we have is our breathing, which provides air pressure to provides air pressure to the vocal cords in the larynx, which are part of the airway, part of the respiratory system. So they're related right there together. The air pressure from our breathing, and the top of the respiratory system basically is the larynx. And so that receives the air pressure. The vocal cords adjust in response to our mental preparation, our mental intention to say something vocally. So then that happens just like, then we can do a buzzing with the lips for a horn player or whatever. Then you have to have some sort of resonance system that's going to take that buzzing vibration, which is really not very impressive or pleasant at all, like I just did when you buzz your lips, or if you take the reed or mouthpiece off a horn, off a oboe or a clarinet or something, it's just kind of squawky. So the vibration is really not anything special. So we have to have a horn connected to that vibration, which is then going to take the sound waves, the sound energy from that vibration, and give it some way of amplifying, right? The body of a acoustic guitar, the body of the violin and cello, the air inside that body, it resonates. It vibrates sympathetically to the vibration of the string, the air inside the tube of the clarinet, the tube of the trumpet that's wound around. The air inside there vibrates sympathetically to the vibration that's connected to it, and that vibrating air is the tone that we hear. We don't really hear the vibration. We hear the air that's vibrating sympathetically. And I've gone into that in other messages and how that relationship works too. But getting kind of an overview right now, just to understand that relationship. And so for us, that's the vocal tract, what we call the vocal tract, which is essentially the airway. and extends from the larynx up. And so we talk about the throat. The throat should be open. Everybody hears this term, open throat. So we're talking about the airway that extends from the larynx up here, and it goes into the mouth, and it goes up into the head, the nasopharynx. So we have the pharynx area that goes up, and then it goes, and then it turns into the nose and through the nasal passages. So all this empty space we want to have be open and available so that there's air inside of it. And that air inside, the air inside then will resonate, which is the air vibrating sympathetically to the vibration of the vocal cords. And so if you understand these relationships, it can help guide you in how you use your voice. For instance, if we push the air out, we can start to recognize that, wait a minute, the role, the purpose of the breath is to feed the vibration inside here, which is right here in the larynx, right? And if we're pushing the air out, the air is going past this without really making this vibrate. So, that's what pushing is. Pushing is making the air go beyond where it serves a purpose. Okay? Another thing to recognize that you can use is that if we understand that the tone is actually the air inside the hollow vocal tract reverberating, vibrating sympathetically to the vocal cords, then we can recognize that if we close that tube, then we're going to negatively affect the ability to have air resonate. So how do we have that tube open? Well, it's the airway. So it can be open by breathing. And then we have to learn how to catch ourselves. Maybe many of us have developed a habit in our speaking to squeeze the vocal tract to feel security. So we have to catch ourselves and teach ourselves to not do that. Trust that we don't have to do that. Keep the airway open. So that when we start to vocalize, when the vibration of the vocal cord starts happening, we don't squeeze anything and distort the vocal tract, so we can have as natural and as complete of a resonance as we can, because the resonance is what ends up being heard. But we can't just sing the resonance. We sometimes hear people talk about sing the resonance, make more resonance, and we get people stretching the throat and yawning the throat and trying to enlarge the throat because a larger throat means more resonance. Well, that's not true, first off. And so if we understand the basic principles and the relationship of the basic components, we can catch these myths, these misunderstandings, right? These false applications, and then we can start to guide ourselves in a more effective way. All right, so if we have nice, open, hollow, but if so for instance, I mentioned yawning. Yawning is a very common idea to think of opening the throat. As soon as we yawn, you can hear how it distorts what I'm saying, because the back of the tongue drops down, and now we're distorting the resonance and actually maybe even having a negative effect on the vibration. So if we understand these relationships, we can catch the mistakes that we are invariably going to make. But then what really matters, it doesn't matter that we make mistakes. What matters is that we don't stay frozen in those mistakes and not recognize them for the mistakes that they are. And a lot of times what people call technique is just mistakes that they've ingrained into habit. So I really want to encourage people to recognize that you don't just impose ideas on your voice and then call it a technique just because it makes you louder or it makes you sound more mature. If we yawn, we sound bigger and more mature than we really are. But are we natural? Are we really functioning as a musical instrument, as a natural vocal instrument? Or are we distorting things to try to make some sort of impression? If we push the breath, we can make more sound, we can be louder, and for a lot of people that seems to be the most important thing. But are we really being acoustic, or are we just being loud? So a good, well-functioning voice, the voice itself really isn't very loud, but the tone is, the resonance is, and that's a product of acoustics, the free resonance of a good, clean vibration, not a forced ha, ah, 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 ah. A clean vibration gives you the greatest acoustic response. The acoustic response is what the listeners hear in the audience, especially in a large auditorium, a large theater, or a concert hall, recital hall. It's not about singing loud, although it may appear that it's loud. It's not just being loud, it's maximizing the energy through the voice into acoustics. Okay, so that's understanding these basic principles to guide you in your process of developing the voice and figuring out how you're going to want to use the voice. Okay, so we've got breathing, vibration, resonance, and learning to combine and coordinate those three together. And with those things in mind, as you learn more specifics in my other classes, the classes that are coming, the things I've written about on the blog, it all starts to make sense, but it's really helpful if you have some of these basic principles to guide your understanding as you learn new things, right? And like I said, we want to behave naturally. Now that should imply that there is a natural way to do these things, the natural way to do the things that we want to do. So it's not so foreign. It really isn't. Even though it may seem like it when we're trying to learn these things, it may seem like, it's so mysterious and it's a myth and this and that and this and that, and only certain people really know how to do it. The reality is that there is a natural way to do this, and we tend to not be familiar with our nature. And so that's what we're really doing, is we're relearning our nature. And natural breathing, natural vocalization, natural resonance is going to really be the most effective and the most effective way and give us the best results to our vocal intentions, aspirations. Okay, so I think this is the kind of laying the groundwork I want to do, and to give sort of the platform to build on for all the other things, the things that I've said over the last couple weeks already, the things I've written about over the last 10 years, and the things that are going to come here in the future. We're going to always be referring back to these basic principles of the vibration, the breathing, and the resonance. And then everything is going to be, the reason I call this the answer to every question is because no matter what the problem may be, whether it seems like it's isolated, it appears to be just an issue with a high note, or it appears to be just an issue with a vowel. But the reality is that there are no isolated issues in the voice. The vocal instrument is a coordination of several aspects, several components, and they have to be working together, and they have to be finding balance, and they have to be behaving naturally, which a big part of behaving naturally is that they're reflexive. It almost feels like, to a certain degree, it feels like we're not doing something, although something is happening, whether that be breath compression, whether that be the glottis coming into form in a nice close together sort of way. We don't do this consciously by applying pressure inside here. We don't create breath compression by pushing on the abdomen, either in or out, whatever you may have been taught. That may be a topic for a future class about, in or out, what's the reality there. If you investigate natural behaviors in other contexts, laughing, things like that, it starts to give us clues of how we should be behaving for our vocal purposes. Okay? Yeah. So that's the idea I want you to understand and start building from, and we'll continue with that. If you have questions, observations, comments, put them on the blog page where the video is, the video and the podcast are posted, and we'll pick up from there. Okay? Appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this and got some new insights. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.